What is simplest in life? It's functioning through your true self to live a simple life. It's getting good at being simple. Self-simplicity becomes the clarity in which you find meaning. It's the removal of the unnecessary. Self-simplicity is the intersection. That's funny. Well, it says that I've spelled it right in there. Okay. So the simplicity of this. So suffering comes when there is attachment to anything that's happening in life. Don't you just love it how I'm always changing the way I speak? You're like, one week you're like, yeah, I really understand her. Yes, yes, yes. And then the next week I change the way I speak. You're like, oh. So it's all about attachment to stories, ideas, concepts, things, anything that's arising in your life. Predominantly what we're most attached to is the chooser and the person that you believe yourself to be. But also there is attachment to things. And then from that suffering arises. From that we go into deluded thinking of blame, pity, victim story, longing, neurosis, fear, anxiety. So there is attachment to these things, and then that has a ripple effect on the brain. So there is an attachment to something false, and then the effect is neurotic thinking, and neurotic behaviors, neurotic relationships. Everything becomes neurotic, which is a very interesting word because it's got erotic in it, so it's like the opposite, neurotic. I don't know what ner stands for, but it's like the opposite to erotic. So erotic's all sensual and sexy, and neurotic is like the brain explodes. It's like the inside out erotic. To imagine two bodies making love to each other with their skins turned inside out, and that is the definition of neurotic. Yes, so that's what begins to happen. And this subject is this most amazing journey, which isn't a journey because that's an idea and that's an attachment to an idea, but it's this amazing, seeming, dreamlike journey of detaching from the lie of you, your life, and where you're going in life, and remembering your presence that is right here, right now. And the remembering isn't like a physical memory of like, oh yes, I remember what presence is. That can happen in the brain, but that's not actually it. It's like seeing it again. It's clearing everything out of the way and really realizing and knowing what's here beyond everything that's changing. Like really knowing what you are beyond that which is changing. And it's kind of this, when that's really seen, or when that's really known, at some point it might be worth the knowing, or it might even be after knowing. There's kind of a shift around, and you stop, the character that stops being the focus, so the attachments, which you could say is the character, because the attachments make up the character, stop being the focus, and then what comes into focus is who you truly are. So it's like almost like who you truly are has been hiding behind this illusory you, and then they kind of shift around and the character goes into the background. The character is still something that appears, the character doesn't die, it's part of this vessel, it's part of expressing through the human form, but it's no longer you, it's no longer an experiencer. So some people say there is no self, like there's a dropping away of the self. And to me, the dropping away of the self isn't the character, so the characteristics, it's not the habits and the conditions, it's the attachment that believes that is who you are. It's that energy that's saying that is me, which that isn't you, that's a happening. And it comes and goes. So what remains? So what remains is this beingness, this presence, this empty looking, and this sense of being. And you can even go deeper than that in a way, because when that's really gone into, then that kind of all disappears, and you're left with nothing, which is by default everything. The problem is your essence, because it's not a thing, and because it's identified with thoughts and feelings and emotions in the body, you're always personifying that and making it into something. So even if you see it, it's normally the person that sees it, and then the person believes it gets it. And the problem with that is that then there's still this attachment to the body, and the body arriving somewhere, and the feelings arriving somewhere, and the emotions arriving somewhere, and it's still this investment into time. So if you look at what the character is, the character is habits and conditions, and then the wants of that character, because the wants of that character determine what happens in that character's life. So you want to listen to this talk, and so it determines your current experience. It determines what begins to happen in that body-mind. It's the same with your partner, like the partner you choose determines a lot of your day-to-day experience. It determines where you live, maybe, how you bring up your kids, or if you have kids, what society thinks you, your financial income. So look, every decision is kind of determine what we define as character. There is no such thing as character really, but it's all these things combined together. So in psychology, like there's often this idea of having a healthy ego. And a healthy ego is an ego that knows what it wants, because your wants are very important in the orchestration of this body. Because if you've got lots of neurotic wants and lots of unhealthy wants, then you're going to get yourself into unhealthy situations. So if you've got a want to be dominated, then you're not really conscious of it, but your body is naturally going that way. Like you're consciously thinking, like, I don't want to go that way, but your body is naturally going that way. If you've got a repulsion towards authority, or a hate for authority, maybe then there'll be an attraction to annoying authority or debunking authority, but it might not be a conscious thing. Your body just seeps that way, and it goes in that way. So you could say that this is like the wants are what's creating your reality, but it's a completely impersonal thing. Your wants aren't something that you determined before you came in this life. You sort of got out a notepad and wrote a letter to life and like, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. It's kind of determined by genetics, karma, whatever that is. Like, I mean, I know what it is in certain terms, but like also maybe there's like this other element that we can't define of like habits and conditions that get reborn that you can't really, it's like magic, it's not like family heritage. But one of them is family heritage, and there is also conditions that your social conditions, your interactions are also defining the way in which your character chooses. And so choosing is a really important part of your life, because it's determining what is happening in your life. But it's not somebody's choice. So what most people are like really screwed in the head about is that you choose and you've got to choose the right thing. And if you don't choose the right thing, you're going to be unhappy in the future. And that's all a lie. But in psychology, they call this the healthy ego, you know, having healthy wants, determining what it is you want, and then manifesting these healthy wants. And I'm totally with that. I just don't believe that there is somebody that can or can't do that. That's just a happening if you transform your wants into healthy wants. And I also suspect in a way it's impossible to kind of just have healthy wants. I suspect that you can maybe change it so it's more towards healthy, but things tend to like to come in half and half, eh? If you haven't noticed. And so I would say that everyone has, to an extent, unhealthy wants and shadow wants. And maybe it would be impossible for you to fully determine that. But that doesn't matter so much. So this is a really important part, the wants part. And in lots of previous talks, I talk about law of attraction, and I do feel like our life is determined by what you want, but it's not in this kind of like, so I don't like see it in such a sort of like typical esoteric way. It's more complex than that, and also more robotic and impersonal. Like in law of attraction, it might be like, you can get what you want if you put the right thoughts in. You've just got to believe in yourself. But I don't really think of it like that you have to do all of those things. I think it's true that if your wants are pure, and if you line your wants up correctly, then life will follow through. But I think it's in a much more impersonal way, a much more deeper way. Like I think we're only conscious of 5% of what's happening in making a choice. I think it's way deeper, and they even say that choices are made 5 seconds before you consciously know it. But I also think that by becoming conscious of things, then you can reprogram the unconscious. That's complex, eh? But miraculous, baby, miraculous. Basically, suffering comes from the attachment to this. So it's all connected to wants, because wants in a way make your character, it makes your life, it makes your social status. We always think it's like it's luck as to what happens in this life, but not really. It's not really luck. That's way too simplistic. Like if you take entanglement theory, then it blows your mind when you begin to think about this, that they've begun to prove that two atoms that interact can never be separated out again, in the sense that you could put them at the opposite ends of the universe, but the movement affects each other. I mean, what does that do for the idea of free will in you and you determining your life and life happening to you? I mean, it's like boop boop. That's pretty cool. But suffering comes to this attachment to the idea, or this attachment to your wants, that wants equal pleasure, and that pleasure equals getting home. That's not conscious. You don't think that, oh yeah, I'm gonna get home if I get this pleasure. It's just a feeling. So you imagine, most people, it's about getting money. I would say. And you imagine that when you get enough money, you will be able to relax and you will feel at home, you'll feel free. And that's the lie. That's the endless lie. It's also what causes so much dysfunction in relationships and so much dysfunction in jobs, because you're always believing you're going to get there and you never do quite get there. You're just about there, you have moments of it, and then it's like it's off, and then you're running again trying to catch up. And this is the perpetual lie of the human. So you believe that who you are is this person, and then your wants are your kind of like character, but you're not really conscious of that. And then this chasing after the wants is this seeking energy, which creates lots of suffering and lots of mental anguish. But it's all kind of happening unconsciously, you're not really aware of it. And when I point this out, maybe you're like, what the hell is she talking about? Or that's so confusing. Why can't you be more simpler, Lisa? Because I can't. I was in an interview recently where some ladies said to me, it was really like genuine, but she didn't mean it offensively, but she was like, we're going to talk about, like, because you're a woman, or like, let's talk about more day-to-day stuff. I don't think she meant it in a sexist way, but it maybe sounds that way. Like, I don't think she did. I think it was really genuine. And I couldn't stay there with her. Like, I tried to talk about like the day-to-day, the relationship, you know, these day-to-day things, and I was like, off, really complex again. Like taking it out really extreme. I just can't stay simple. Just check that everything is working. Hello, hello, you know, yes, everything is working. Nice. You can see I've got a nice big puffy bit of hair up there. Oh wow. So non-duality is this kind of personal and impersonal thing, because at first when you're in non-duality, the idea is that you think that you as a separate person, that you're sitting there, you're listening to these talks, it's your choice, it's your free will, and that you are going to arrive at something called peace of mind, or you're going to be more peaceful. That might be the effect, that you are more peaceful, but you have this belief that you are going to arrive somewhere. But the thing is who is this you that's going to arrive somewhere? It's all thought, it's all idea made. It doesn't mean that you don't practice sitting in the I am, because you're not even doing it anyway. The idea that that's a prescription and that you're doing it is your illusion. Like, that's something that's appearing. The mind comes up with the thought and then that's followed through. The same with if you decide to cook dinner and follow a recipe. You believe it's you, but it's not you. So I'm not saying don't do that, but all of that practice and deconstruction is on the human level. And it's the person being deconstructed. And that seems to be what happens for most people. For some people it's sudden and there's no path and there's none of this. But for most people it's a deconstruction of that person. And when that person is being deconstructed, at some point there is just this letting go that happens, the surrender, which everyone says is grace, which I agree with, but everything is grace also. But that letting go just kind of happens, like, so you're deconstructing and it feels like you, and then at some point it just swaps over. You stop being this separate person, and then you are everything, and in that appears this separate person, in that appears this apparent character. But the character is no longer the center of the universe. Beingness is, it's no longer you, it's a happening. And that is magnanimous. magnanimous. And this deconstruction doesn't have to look like anything. It's all, so the mind feels agitated, it's feeling uncomfortable, and then it wants to go to the story of what can I do, where can I go? And really what's happening in that is there is discomfort in the solar plexus region, more than likely. And then there's these thoughts appearing, and then there is an energy which believes that has truth, that if you get the right path, if you do the right thing, then you'll feel better now or you'll feel better in the future. And all of that's in your dreamland, and the whole time in that there is presence. So there is this presence that's happening, and then that's happening in the dream, and you're constantly following that which is happening in the dream. And then it's like, stay still, but it's nobody that can stay still. It's here already, that stillness. It's like, go to that stillness. And then the person's like, where is the stillness? But it is, it's like, it's so obvious to me. It's like peering in that stillness. It's here, it's in everything. It's in the room, it's not a size, it's not something you can grasp. It's in the looking, but then the looking isn't separate from everything. The experiencing isn't separate from everything. So the hearing and the heard are the same. The seeing and the seen are the same. The feeling and the felt are the same. It's only a mind which is energetically making you feel like who you are is a solid instrument that's separate from all things. That you're in here and that you're conscious. And people even believe that, there's a point where your consciousness ends and the world begins. But that's not actually your experience. It's a craziness. There is no point where you end and the world begins. There is only everything that's happening. There is no point, like where does your consciousness end? Does it end here and my voice is here? But then how do they meet? And then you see everything is arising in consciousness. And then you see there is no center to a consciousness. And then you see consciousness is not a thing. And then there is simply everything. Or nothing appearing as everything. Isn't that wonderful? Mind is like, what about me? What does that give me? What does that give me? Where's the bliss? I don't experience the bliss. And then the mind's like looking for the bliss. Where's the bliss? And the bliss is in time, and then the stillness is here. Here, 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 here. And the stillness is so still, it is in all movement. No? Okay, we take some questions.